Welcome everybody to the Too High podcast. My name is Seth Galina, and I'm alongside my main man, Diante Lee. D, what's going on?
Not much, man. I was just telling you I'm a little sleep deprived because we're running into some different offenses now. I feel like I sleep easy. I feel like it's the weirdest thing to say, but I sleep easier when we're dealing with 10 personnel. It's not as fun when it's not 10 personnel.
I thought you were sleep deprived because your celly keeps ringing off the hook, but maybe that's a different story.
Man, that's a different conversation for a different day.
Podcast notes, because I'm traveling this week, I'm going to beautiful Cincinnati, Ohio. Only one podcast this week, so we got both NFL and college coming your way. In fact, so that's why we're a day late. In fact, as we're recording this, one of my good friends just texted me saying, "Where the fuck is the podcast?" So we are doing it right now, and obviously you guys are listening to it right now. So what are we talking about today? We're going to start with the Buffalo Bills. We haven't really talked about the Bills. We talked a little bit about the Bills with Mr. Ben Solak and Mr. Steve Ruiz, and Mr. Josh Allen finally played a really good game. Even though they killed Miami 2 weeks ago, 35-0. He was like, shaky. He was great again against, Washington.
Washington, yeah.
And so you wrote about it. What did you see with the Bills?
I mean, so like the context that I was really going back to look at is, like before I started working at PFF, I live in San Diego, right? So I'm not seeing a ton of Bills on my local feed. I have Sunday Ticket, but I'm typically not seeking out to watch the Buffalo Bills. But I had remembered at the times that I watched, like in 2018 and 2019, and then watching now, every time I watch it, like I feel like they used to have more tight ends. They used to play more personnel groupings than what they do now. So I went back to look, and it's right. Like the thing I wrote about, like really what I took away from it was like, it's the most interesting thing in the world. Like coming out of 2019, if somebody would have told you that what Buffalo needed to fix Josh Allen's issues was to go as spread as possible, to get all the tight ends and fullbacks off the field, go as spread as possible, and you're gonna run like pure drop back like all the time. You're only running play action on like 15% of your passes. I would have said you're nuts. There's no way. But if you look at, how this turned out, that's basically what it is. They're all in on the spread. Like right now, through the first 3 weeks, their number 3 personnel grouping is 21 personnel. And I don't know if you saw this when I was talking about it in the chat, Seth, but their 21 personnel package is fake. Like of the 21 snaps, 8 of them happen in the red zone. So that's essentially your short yardage package.
Their
basically.
sniffer package that they do.
Basically, yeah, like that's a short yardage package where you're literally just trying to manufacture yards in the run game, right? There's really nothing else tied to it. So that's really what was interesting to me. And then from there, and you watch it and you'll see, like a player like Dawson Knox, is he Travis Kelce? No, but he's a versatile enough tight end that you could split him out pretty often, right? And he could live as a true receiver type. But because they play as much 10 personnel as they do, Dawson basically always has to be in line as a tight end because they would never have a tight end attached otherwise because they play so much 10 personnel. So like what that means for the run game, for Brian Dable and going away from like all the counter and power that he used to run coming out of Bama, even like the pin and pull stuff, that he used to run his first couple of years with Josh Allen in Buffalo, like that stuff is kind of going to the wayside now, which makes sense, right? If you're playing with less heavy personnel, can't really do as much heavy personnel stuff. It's not as diverse of a run game. So, like, with that, my big thing for them this year is that we're just going to continue to see what we're seeing now, which is just like these ridiculous levels of variance in how their offense performs because it's all on one guy's shoulders. Like, it's all on Josh Allen in the drop back game. So some games it's going to be like Pittsburgh, where they have a really good game plan. They're taking away those intermediate throws and forcing them to either try to take the top off or check it down. And then he's got to hit.
And they're getting pressure, like
right, and you're pressuring them,
yeah.
Right? So it's either going to be that, or you get what you get against Washington, which is a team that just wants to rush forward and play man all the time. And that offense, because they have Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley and Dawson Knox, et cetera,
and Manny, my guy,
right? They can pick out mismatches better than anybody in the league because they have the receivers to take advantage of it. But if they're not dealing with that, and what I ended my article with was like, I wonder when defenses are going to start treating them like a true spread or air raid team more often. Because when that happens, that's when it gets interesting to me for what their next adjustment is. Because it's not like they can run the ball and they just choose not to. They can't run the ball and they also choose not to. So, for that reason, like I have some long-term concerns with them as far as being a contending team this year. But enjoy the ride. It's going to be high variance every week.
I think so. If you've ever listened to the Too High podcast before, or before that, the PFF College Football podcast, you will know that we dislike a lot of different offenses.
Yes.
This would be a type of offense, like broadly, philosophically,
right? Structurally,
that we would be like, don't do this, blah 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 blah. Personnel wise, this is where the change is, and why we can say that stuff, but also be like, okay, but this offense is also really good because personnel wise, it fits exactly what you can do with a true spread, 2x2, 3x1 spread, no tight end stuff. Because and this goes back to what we talked about a few weeks ago with the Bills, but you saw it again against Washington, which is if you play man to man, like you said. First of all, Stephon Diggs is too good.
Way too good.
Top 5 receiver, top 3 receiver, whatever in the league. Too good. Beasley is obviously useful in what he does. Like you said, Dawson Knox had a really nice touchdown catch against, I don't know if it was man or zone, but it ended up being single coverage.
Right.
He made some nice play on it. And then you add in Emmanuel Sanders, who is also a really good top whatever receiver, even though maybe we didn't see it as much last year in New Orleans. He is a really good receiver. So what they've done is they said, okay, if you play man coverage, we are too good. You do not have enough coverage people to deal with us.
Right.
And even if you have a top 10 coverage guy, well, we can live in that world with Stephon Diggs because he is amazing.
Right.
And then the flip side is, all right, so let's play zone. You got to do what the Steelers do, which is either just get pressure normally with rushing 4, which is not always easy, or you say, which I think is the better thing, is you come with some sim pressures with some creepers where you don't know where the pressure is coming from. Then you get some more free rushers. Then you get some more looks where Josh Allen doesn't know where the pressure is coming and maybe he steps into it by accident, whatever. Because against zone, and he's not like this unbelievable, quarterback yet. And the thing, I'll get to this later, but so what happens against zone is he gets out of the pocket.
Yeah.
If you don't get pressure, or if you rush with 4, and there was one play where Chase Young comes around the outside and he just dips underneath. So it's he gets a pressure. I don't even know if we consider it a pressure, but he gets kind of close to Allen, but he just dips inside. There's a wall in front of him because the other guys are just rushing one-on-one. They don't win. He gets outside, and against zone, he's so good against zone when he gets outside the pocket because his accuracy has become so much better than it was, kind of throwing on the run.
That used to be the worst part of his game.
Right?
Anytime he would extend, bad things happen.
Yes. And now you extend against zone, defenses don't know who's playing where. Not who's playing where, they're having a hard
where the
time,
routes are breaking and all that.
It's tough, right? You're not one-on-one. You're not just glued to a receiver, and receivers are finding holes, and he's being accurate with those throws. Now, the one thing I was going to say was, this should have never happened. I know I'm bringing up old news at this point, but at the end of the day, Josh Allen probably not. You could say whatever you want. Oh, the Bills talked to him and he knew, and they knew he was going to be a star if he put the work in. Blah 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 blah. Should have never been an early round pick, and therefore he should have never got the chances he kept getting. Especially first of all, he would have never started, and then he would have never got 2 years where he played like ass.
Right.
So it's we let this happen. We let this man become a really good quarterback, and now you're seeing that melange. Sorry for using a French word. I know you don't understand language. Sorry for using a melange of these incredible attributes, and him really becoming a really smart quarterback. And he's not turning the ball over. He's not throwing into coverage. And the accuracy has gotten so much better. He's not just flinging it everywhere. Like it's incredible. And yeah, I agree. And so I'll ask you the question: is when you say, okay, what does that mean when you say if they're gonna be this quote unquote air raid spread team? What does then that mean defenses have to do?
So for them, I mean, it's going to be the game that I'm going to have circled for them are the two that they have against New England, right? Because what New England wants to do is play with the coverage advantage. This is something that you and I talked about and some of the other work that we're doing for PFF. They always want to have a coverage advantage in terms of bodies. The issue with them, though, is that they want to play one-on-one coverage, right? So,
Yeah.
with what, that's going to give me a really good feel for, how Belichick, the best defensive coach that we have in the sport, feels about how you need to defend this offense. Because one thing that I saw from the Patriots when they were playing the Jets a couple of weeks ago is that when they get in the dime, they do have this like really interesting cover two package that reminded me a lot of exactly what Pittsburgh did against Buffalo. So if that works, now you have, two different games as a sample size of playing these softer cover two zones to take away those intermediate throws. And the one thing about that game against Pittsburgh was, I mean, Allen wasn't making poor decisions, right? It wasn't a bad game because he was just throwing the ball, into the chest of Minkah Fitzpatrick. He was taking shots down the field like you're supposed to, and it was just misses. But I think with this offense, that's kind of where you're left at. You don't have to worry about the run game because that they don't want to run and they're not very good at it when they do. And you kind of have to be able to goad them into playing that high variance game. Yep. Because if you just say, hey, we're going to play one-on-one or we're just going to play single high and give you those overs, he might miss a couple, but he's going to start killing you on it, And then the second you start doing that and you start constricting those areas in the seam, now you get your Stephon Diggs on the digs behind them, on those, post curl routes, on those choice routes and stuff like that behind them. And that becomes its own issue. So that's going to be really telling for me. And the last one I want to make separate from your question, and why it continues to blow me away every time I look at the data on this. Like if you look at all the other quarterback, the best quarterbacks in the 2018 class, right? Baker Mayfield, best years coming now, playing with Bill Callahan and Kevin Stefanski, right? Downhill run game, multiple tight ends, play action pass, keep it easy. Lamar exists in a similar world, but they obviously put a lot more on his legs to create the space that they need to get to the rest of their offense. He's effectively like the only really young quarterback that got more drop back and got better at it. And coming out of 2018 and 2019, like if you were to take what he did at Wyoming, you would say, okay, you get into 21, you get into 12, you get into 22, and you run play action. And if you look at that,
yeah, man,
he was horrible at it in 2018 and 2019. So I understand the idea behind saying, hey, we're just going to cut this out because he does not do it well. But the fact that you cut it out and what you replace it with is even more. Now you basically have to be able to fix the offense with your arms and legs exclusively. That's what blows me away. So to your point about it should have never happened this way. Like that's 100% true. And for 99.999% of these cases, this would have been a hilarious failure making this change.
And it does look, like in the Pittsburgh game, it can look like a hilarious failure. It's just that he's too good now.
He's too good now. Like that's the truth.
It's not going to happen too often. I do agree with the whole variance idea of this, but it's like, I just think he's too, if he was like 10% less accurate, then yeah, but he's so accurate now. Like I don't get
Or if they had one less of the receiving threats than they have right now.
Yes.
Like if you subtract one of them, then maybe yes. Maybe playing the variance game with them gives you a much better chance than what it would be right now. But to your point, he's grown too much as a quarterback now in the supporting cast in terms of receiving talent. It's so good that the fact that they don't have a real offensive line doesn't matter. And I don't even know how many teams can you say that about in the NFL,
Not the Chicago Bears, but we're waiting. We're not talking about that because everyone else is talking about that. We're not talking about Justin Fields. Okay. There's something I wanted to bring up that we've talked about a little bit is, that everyone talks about is pre-snap motion. So we wanted to talk about something that's a specific pre-snap motion and why it works and why we're both kind of into it, or at least I'm into it. When you watch certain teams, so two teams that are doing this thing, Ravens and the 49ers. What they're both doing, and the Ravens have been doing this for a long time, and I'm not sure, I don't know enough about the 49ers offense to know how long they've been doing this. They're definitely doing it this year. So the Ravens get zone coverage because if you play man coverage, we hear this every time that the Ravens are on, any TV, any like national broadcast. If you play man coverage against the Ravens, he kills you with his legs, Lamar. So teams, they get zone coverage because they say, we need to keep eyes on Lamar so when he scrambles, we can go attack him. One of the issues with that, and one of the cool things that your frenemy, Greg Roman, has done is in the run game, they bring in, obviously, all these tight ends. They bring in the fullback, Pat Ricard. And what they do with him is they say, okay, we're getting zone. That means, yes, teams can bump over, but we're not going to get someone who runs with the motion. And what that does is, okay, right before the snap, Ricard will come in motion to the opposite side of the field, and then Lamar will snap it while he's still running horizontally. And defenses don't, honestly, like you want to say like, oh yeah, we'll just bump over, everyone will just bump over. You don't really see that often. Teams kind of just stay static. And what ends up happening is you get an extra blocker to where you want the run to go without an extra defender getting over there. And they absolutely kill teams with that. And then you see that you're seeing it with Kyle Juszczyk in San Francisco, where you're getting the same thing. They're doing this a lot. And I think just in general, sometimes they will even like, with the 49ers, sometimes they will just line him up and then motion him and then pause. So it's not even just like, snap, a motion at the snap. He'll even pause, but the defense aren't moving. And so in my brain, I was thinking about this and I was like, okay, well, that's the nice thing is when you have these really good, really dynamic players at the fullback or even tight end position, when a receiver goes in motion, alarm bells start going off on the defense because they're changing. Everything is changing for the defense. Oh my God, we got to get over there. We're in man. We got to run. The nickel's got to go because the strength changed, blah, 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 blah.
Right. If we're in zone, do we have to check our coverage? Is this quarters now? Do we go to 3? Is this cover 2? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Everything changes for defense. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, when a fullback moves, whoa, it's like, did the invisible man just move? Like nothing. It's like nothing changes. So all these teams are getting free, again, like we'd say, a free hat on the play side just from motioning the fullback. And then obviously you have two good players. I think Ricard and Juszczyk are the two MVPs of the league. I've said this before. I'll say it again. Okay, it's a bit of an exaggeration. But they're so good. And then you're getting all these added benefits of having them in the game because defenses just don't move when fullbacks move. And I think you can see a lot of that going forward. Tough to go find these guys. This is always the issue. Tough to go find a second tight end. Tough to go find a fullback. They don't exist a lot, and that's kind of the problem.
Finding a guy that's good enough to justify taking taking a receiver off the field is really the issue you're running into.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, but I was going to say, another guy off the Shanahan tree, like one of the things that I really enjoy with Sean McVay isn't so much the jet motion to run outside zone. It's when they go with like stacked receivers or a tight end and a receiver out as the wing outside of the tight end. And then a Robert Woods or a Cooper Kupp will come in motion and they run duo. And then they're just smashing everybody down. And now he loops outside. And to your point, it's the same idea. Like you're getting an additional blocker on a run support player at the point of attack. The 49ers, like you said, like they're great at it. And because they run toss as part of their outside zone, like if you bring that guy over in motion, he's flying up to the safety, they run toss. You're basically eliminating 75% of the defense on the toss to start with because the ball is going to be too wide for any of those backside defenders to get to. And now if you just get a piece of that run support defender, you're out the gate. Like that was Raheem Mostert's, touchdown last year against the Jets on the first play of the game. Like it was toss outside zone. They bring Juszczyk over. He takes out the run support player, and there's nobody else home. And you see that happen often. With the Ravens, that's something that you were just talking about, and with them, it's almost double. It's almost double the damage because you're reading the end as well. So like you have there just gets so many. It's just this massive humanity at the point of attack. Like you can't be right as a defense. And then the other issue with it is the second that you start tilting your defense to deal with that motion, here come all the nakeds, the bootlegs, the drift routes that we keep talking about. The more you move, the more you get punished for it. So you're in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. But that's like maybe my favorite way to get to some of these perimeter runs, out of heavy and lighter personnels is bringing these motions across to kick out that run support player.
What the 49ers are doing, I think I saw another team do it, but I don't remember, is with this motion where they're bringing Juszczyk late, right before the snap, is so like they're bringing him to the tight end side. So like he's on one side of the formation, the tight end, whether it's like Ross Dwelly or Kittle is on the other side. And then so they're motioning him to the tight end side. And the tight end is now they're kind of working a double team. So what they're doing is the tight end is now he'll block out the defensive end or the Sam or whatever. And the fullback, with the speed that he has coming on the snap, is saying, okay, if that defensive end wants to work inside, bang, I hit him right there. And then we'll just create this wide hole outside. And if he doesn't, okay, whatever, I can just work up the hole. But we're kind of double teaming him, even though I've started from a kind of a ways away. Definitely starting on the backside, and then on the snap, you're still not quite there. I think that's really interesting is the way they're able to create that wide hole just by being like, hey, we're going to mash you with a double team that you don't realize the double team is coming because it happens so quickly and you can't adjust to it. Right. My question for you is defensively, this is a kind of a broad question, but like, why do you not want to adjust? Like if you're like, let's just even say simply like you're in 11 personnel. You have a slot receiver on one side and a receiver, and you have on the other side a tight end and a receiver. Tight end motions from one side of the field to the other. You're an over team. You want to be over to the tight end or whatever. Right. Why do teams want to be like, okay, now the tight end's over there. We got to get over to the tight end, or why we say, okay, well, we're going to stick into it, or we're not going to move. The linebacker's not going to bump. Like, what is the thought process there for both sides of the coin here?
I think that, so using this 11 personnel versus nickel example, one of the issues when you start talking about moving the tight end is you already have a run support defender detached from the box, right? Your nickel is already, especially if you're in cover 1 or cover 3, he's already basically out of the run fit, right? Because he's got a slot receiver that he has to handle. So now, this kind of gets back to the conversation that we were just having, which is how much investment do you want to make in matching this motion specifically? So some teams do move the front. I think it's easier to handle at a too high, like, I don't want people to think that I'm just, a shameless shill for playing split safety coverages. But one of the advantages of it is that you can do more in terms of movement of your linebackers in order to match up with motion, because you can always get a safety involved in the run fit, right? Like that's what somebody like a Brandon Staley can do better than anybody. That's what these two high guys with Vic Fangio and some of these 3-4 split safety teams are able to do better than anybody. The defense is more balanced. So that way, as things move, especially within the core of the formation, with tight ends, fullbacks, et cetera, there are better answers. If you're a 4-down, single high team, now you start having to make some difficult decisions on, do you change the rotation of your defense? And that's a dangerous world to live in, because if an offense can dictate how you're rotating, you're going to get taken advantage of every time, right? Like, we started this podcast off talking about college football, and the number one thing that we talk about is that backside glance route, right? And the second you see that weak side safety is vacating the seam, it's getting hit right behind you. And the idea still exists in the NFL, right? If I know where you're spinning down to or where you're spinning from, I can always I can run away from the rotation. So you're going to be losing a body in run support for starters. And then if I pass, I can pass the ball in a way where I know I'm going to have a guy. I can pick my matchup basically. So those are the difficulties. And then, from there, so it really just comes down to like, what are you motioning to do? Some teams motion, like we said, to create extra gaps. Some teams motion to get man zone indicators. Some teams motion to get front indicators if you're setting a protection. There are a bunch of different reasons that teams motion, right? You can get a lot of different information out of it. So I think that for a lot of defensive coaches, in order to not give away all the information that an offense is after, you try to stay static, right? And not change your rotation or check your coverage all the time. But this is where you end up with issues like this, right? And this is something that I was just talking about with the Cardinals last week in my likes and dislikes, is how horrible they were against fitting the run with Minnesota. And what you're saying is basically exactly what Minnesota was doing. You run jet motion, they want to play man, so now the nickel comes flying over. Yeah. The linebackers don't adjust.
Because they're like, well, we're in man. So
we're in man. Why would I move? And now they're running the ball to an open edge, basically. Or there's nobody to handle the cutback because the linebackers don't have good leverage on the ball. So that's really what I think it comes down to when we talk about motion and some of the issues it presents to a defense.
There was a good snap. You talk about like running away from the rotation. There was a good snap in the Monday night game, Dallas on offense against the Eagles, when the Eagles showed like a double mug type of front, and then you saw Dak check to a different run. And unfortunately, I was watching. I don't have access to the Manning cast, but I was listening to Brian Greasy, and he was talking about, he sees the rotation, he sees that they're going to throw the ball, and what they did was he saw the rotation, and they end up running away. They run zone away, which is not a bad play against a double mug because you just get one-on-one, and then
exactly
what happens?
You can bend it back.
There's
nobody on the weak
rotation.
Side
so it's like, on paper that weak safety is rolled down. He's your cutback player, but he's far. Like just geographically,
right.
He's
right.
Not
He's
there.
Far. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something. And I also think just the kind of answering my own question here is just like the speed of the motion is a problem, because if you're getting, we see this all the time in the NFL. You don't see it as much in college, or high school, but the tight end will be, in a 3-point stance, hand in the dirt next to the tackle, in line. And then he takes, he gets up,
take a step back, yep,
and he runs cross formation. It's like, hey, you want to go from you don't want to stay, you want to stay in your over front when the linebacker switches, he trades, like whatever, no problem. But what we're saying with this particular motion, you can't do that. You don't know when it's coming because it's happening so fast, and then there's not football.
And to that point, every kind of motion is its own kind of motion, right?
Yes.
Like not all motions are created equal. That, that's a change of strength formation. If you're gonna adjust, once you start adjusting the motions, you got to have rules to adjust to every kind of motions, right? So if you change strength, okay, we're gonna do this with the front. Okay, if the slot goes over here, we're gonna bring the nickel over. Well, is it man or is it zone? Is it 2x2 or is it 3x1 now? Those types of things. Is if the back, if you start out in empty and the back comes back in, what does that do to your defense? If he starts in the backfield and he motions out in the empty, that's its own motion. So, again, the more that you talk about it, I think that I hadn't even considered that until you brought it up. And the more that I'm thinking about it, I don't want to say it's impossible, but this is, again, why you have to be very careful about the way that you structure your defense, right? Because something like this can put you in a bind. And good elite offensive coaches like a Kyle Shanahan, where it looks on paper like all these motions are just happening for the sake of the motion. But you can see as games go on, especially like when he's rolling, when he really is on top of his play calling, you can see as you go back and watch the kind of information you can gather from that based on what the defense is doing or not doing. So, these are just the kind of dangers that you run into when you start talking about how you want to deal with or adjust to or not adjust to motion.
Yeah, it's not there's no right answer, I would say, and it's tough. The offense is always going to have the advantage in this particular scenario. No, you can just play man. I guess that's the answer. But then you get cooked. by Lamar Jackson's
Right.
legs.
Exactly.
You get cooked by Jimmy G's scrambling, but no. Okay. Next thing we want to talk about was the Patriots offense. And they bring in the offseason, they go out, they get 2 new tight ends. They obviously get the receivers too, but we wanted to focus on the tight ends because we think it's interesting because what we're noticing is that kind of like the defense is dictating what they do with the tight personnel, with their own personnel packages. So week 1 they played a 3-4 team in the Dolphins. So what we say the general rule is, okay, you're playing an odd front team, a 3-4 team. What you want, they're a balanced defense because they have a nose tackle. The nose tackle is sitting in front of the center. That balances them. So how do we unbalance them? Like, that's our job on offense, to say, okay, we got to unbalance you because we don't want to let you live in this world where you can just do whatever you want to do on defense. So how do we unbalance you? Okay, we're going to put, and this is what the Patriots did on 35 snaps, I believe. We're going to play 2 tight ends next to each other on the same side. YY wing, hip slot. So what this does now, it changes where this, it changes things, right? So the defense got to adjust to that, and they got to start moving people over because now you have too many gaps to deal with. One of the issues with an odd front team is especially you put the tight ends there, and then you get a C gap that's a little vacant. You do have the B gap too, depending on how they play the odd front, but you get a C gap problem. Now you have 2 gaps between where the defensive end was and where the kind of down linebacker is coming, which is a problem. I saw LSU have massive problems against this when they played Ole Miss in 2019 against Rich Rodriguez offense. So anyways, you have this issue of you have too many gaps without a first level defender. And what do you not want to have defense is 2 gaps in a row without a first level defender. So the Patriots are like, all right, cool. You want to be an odd front team? No problem. We're like 12 personnel because we just bought these 2 tight ends. We just bought Jonnu Smith and we just bought Hunter Henry, and they're good players. We're going to put them on the field. And we're going to run to them too. We're going to run outside zone to them. We're going to run duo to them. Okay, good. The offense is not good in general, but I get what they're doing. They only score 16 points or whatever, but I get what they're doing.
I see the structure.
You understand it.
Yeah, I get it.
Now they go against the Jets, 4 down, Robert Saleh. You go against the Saints, 4 down, Dennis Allen. I got less than 20 snaps and 12 personnel in 2 games. So it's you're letting it, because now in 4 down, we don't necessarily need to. We want to be a little more balanced. We want to be a tight end on each side. Right. So they're all right, well, screw it. We're going to play 11 personnel because we want another third receiver on the field because we don't need this second tight end to build a 4-man surface. And it's okay, but you don't have good players.
That's the issue. And this goes back to what we were talking about with fullbacks, right? If you can't justify taking one of your 2 best players, which Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith both are objectively 2 of their best offensive players, just to put another slot on the field, it just doesn't make sense. Their receivers aren't winning one-on-ones right now, and Mac Jones, for I think as decently as he's shown throughout the first 3 weeks, he's not at a level where he can beat NFL defenses with his arm yet. He doesn't have enough of a grip of the playbook yet, I think is pretty clear as well, to be able to make the kind of adjustments that offense asks its quarterback to make based on the looks that they're getting. So I would like to see them, and I understand why they go away from it, right? As you were saying, 12 personnel against 3-4, you can stretch the edge really wide, right? That's why 12 personnel is so useful. And that allows you to stay downhill and find, you're able to create bubbles in the run game, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're in 11 personnel versus 3-4, both B gaps are closed. You got an open edge on one side, so you have nothing to stretch out the edge there, and they have an outside linebacker on the outside of your tight end, right? So the defense is in a good spot. And I think that you kind of brushed by the point, but I think it's a good one, which is how often do we see an offense allow a defensive structure to dictate the way that it approaches the game? It never works in that direction. And I don't know if I understand why it is that it's this way. You know, like you said, you're able to pick up on the tendency now. I think that I want to see it for a few more weeks before I really say something definitive about,
Well,
good or bad yet. But I don't think I get why they're doing what they're doing right now.
I think, so I saw this after week 2. So they had seen the Dolphins, they did it. Then they saw the Jets, they didn't do it. And now I said at that point, like, let me see the next 2 weeks, because the next 2 weeks are going to be against, again, a 4-down team in Dennis Allen. But then in the big Sunday night game coming up, they have the Bucs. So, like, what are the Bucs? They're going to go in 12 personnel. The Bucs are going to match with base. They're going to run their 34 base. And it's like, all right, well, are they going to go back to the 12 because they know that the Bucs are a 3-4 team? So that is honestly something very interesting to look at, because it's like, I think that gives you like the Bucs can stop the run, but these are your best players, and like the Bucs will kill you. I know the Bucs have cornerback issues, so maybe that'll be something to look for. So maybe they'll say like, okay, well, you guys don't have cornerbacks. Your Richard Sherman is visiting you. Maybe he'll sign with you guys. He's not good at it. He's old or whatever. So we're gonna put 3 receivers on the field. I don't know. Maybe that'll be it. But I think we can get pretty definitive if they go into 12 personnel running YY wing sets against the Bucs 3-4. I think we can get pretty definitive that this is who they want to be. And it's always interesting, because it's like, I just feel like at the end of the day, put your best players on the field. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. All right. I don't know. Let's put your best players on the field. I couldn't even name you who the third receiver is.
It's an idea, Exactly. I don't know who their wide receiver
is. Aguilar, Jacoby Myers, and man. Let's just never.
First of all, the fact that those are the first 2 names that came out of your mouth, and we don't know who the wide receiver 3 is, tells you how nasty that receiving core is.
Look, Aguilar had a free run at one of the safeties in New Orleans. Either it was PJ or Jenkins. One of those, like the Saints were playing like quarters or cover 2, and they didn't get a reroute on the slot, so he just got this free run, vertical. He's going 20, and he's going to run that corner post, and it was like, that's it. It's like you're the number 1 receiver on this team. You can't even run a corner post. Right. Anyways, okay, next topic. Something that we've been talking about quite a bit amongst ourselves is targeting in college and in the NFL. Obviously, it's a big deal in college right now. And just wanted to talk through some of the ideas that you had about basically how to get rid of leading with the crown of your helmet.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly... So the conversation kind of came up between us and a few other colleagues, right? Late in the Sunday night football game, and the conversation was being had, across social media as well. And I understand some of the frustration that comes up with some of the penalties, but I think that one of the mistakes that we continue to make is that we still do this like screen grab at a particular point of contact and say, hey, there's a shoulder involved, and we cannot continue to behave as if having a shoulder involved in the tackle is like absolution from an issue, from an illegal level of contact. So like on that hit, is the brunt of the contact given above the head or neck? No, like it is given pretty squarely in the chest. But the issue that I brought up between us and our colleagues is the fact that the head drops at all is an indication of an illegal attempt to tackle someone. And we have to be mindful of that. I think that it's not about judging. I thought we got away from judgment of intent, 5-6 years ago. Like it doesn't matter what the intent is. If a guy's head snaps back, because of contact that you initiated, then yes, you have to be held responsible for it. And I understand that a lot of people say, well, what are you supposed to do? And I said, as a defensive coach, and somebody who thinks about the game outside of my own coaching, is somebody who thinks about the game from a defensive mindset. Sometimes it's okay to say that the answer is not like that, like we have to be more cognizant of that. There are different ways, you brought up something that I hadn't even considered that I thought was genius, which is to drill in the coaching point of, if you know that you're moving too fast to be able to brace yourself in a way to protect the receiver from your contact, use your hands as a lead piece of contact, because what that's going to do is it's going to brace you for one, and then so that's going to help both you and the receiver, and that's going to separate him from your momentum for a brief second, right? Like your hands and arms get to act as brakes for a moment. That was a smart idea.
Well, I'll just tell you what I got it from, because I think I got it from the league. Like at some point, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and I'm sure it was like that everywhere in North America. But they were like, okay, crackback blocks, we're done with them. Illegal hits, we're done with them. But their thing, what I remember was you could peel back or crack back. Not a crackback necessarily. I'm talking more about peel back on a kick return, interception, but was, hey, if the first point of contact is with your hands, and I could be totally wrong, and I really hope I'm not wrong, but the first point of contact is with your hands, we're okay with it. But you cannot be with your, even if it's shoulder to chest, it's done. We cannot do this anymore.
Right.
And I think a point that you made was just like, yes, I get it. Again, it's like, yes, okay, it's shoulder to chest or whatever. It's not even the ones that aren't crown of the helmet, which we know for sure crown of the helmet we can't have anymore.
Right.
The way I see it is just like, guys, it's okay if you don't make the play this time. Like I'm sorry to say it like that, but it's like I
hate to say it that way too.
You got beat by a step or whatever. You can't make the play anymore. It's illegal for you to make this play anymore if you want to do it like that. Like I don't know how else to do it and keep the game safe.
Right, like, and another one of our friends made the very simple but salient point. Like, you either want to legislate out dangerous contact or you don't. Like, there comes a point where you cannot continue to parse what kind of contact you're going to allow, and that gets to the point that I was making about, like, you have to take intent out of it. You have to take the idea of shoulder-led contact being legal out of it. I've seen Ray Lewis clock plenty of people with just the ball joint of his shoulder that I can 100% say is contact that we should not allow in the sport, right? Like, and my joke was, this is not an indictment on this person, this person's humanity. I'm not saying that he beats dogs for hitting somebody in a way that's against NFL rules, but we have to legislate out certain kinds of contact. And to your point, like, a guy that's completely laid out, full extension, trying to catch a ball in the seam. I understand. You're trying to dislodge the football. I get it. And I'm not even saying that I disagree with the approach from Jimmy Ward. I'm not mad at Jimmy Ward at all. Like, I get it. The point of playing defensive back is to not allow completions. And you made a decision that you were going to do whatever it took to not allow a completion. I'm not mad at that. But that also means that sometimes you're going to get called for 15-yarders. Yeah. And that's okay too. And we have to make sure that we're policing it, because what we can't allow is enough of a gray area where a hit like that happens with a player like Jimmy Ward, and now it's not shoulder to the chest, right? It's shoulder right underneath the chin strap. And now you got to go on commercial break for 5 to 8 minutes because a guy is in bad shape. Yeah. Like, that's not good for the game at all. So, and my thing is just that if that's the trade-off I have to make sure that this game is played in a way that's conducive to everybody's health as much as it's possible, considering that, we're basically asking guys to get into car accidents, 40, 50 times a game, then that's just what it's got to be. Like, I'm sorry. I don't have another genius answer for you. Some tackles are just going to be against the rules, and we got to be okay with that.
Because it's like, I say the hands thing is a good idea, but it doesn't change enough. What changes the whole thing is just being like, you can't do this. Like, sorry, we can't have violent collisions anymore.
I mean, a couple of weeks ago, you were in chat when I got into it with Justice during the Ohio State-Oregon game, right?
Yeah,
when
I was.
When Baby Sewell got penalized and it was ultimately retracted for targeting, when Chris Olave kind of turned his back, and he was harping in on the point that a receiver turned his back, and why does that make him defenseless? And my point is that, again, we can't continue to harp on these very minute
Mm-hmm.
points. The issue is not trying to find out when a receiver is or is not defenseless. The issue is when you drop your eyes on contact, you are at that point, you are opting out from making the safest contact possible. The second you drop your head, what you're telling me as an observer is you are not concerned with whether or not you're being reckless. You're trying to make this tackle by any means necessary. And hey, if that's how you feel like you got to get a guy on the ground, I can't tell you how to make a decision in a split second. That's not what I'm trying to say. But if you make illegal contact, you're going to get a 15-yarder. And if you're in the NFL, you're going to lose your game check for it. And that's the trade-off. That's the way this works. I want guys to continue playing football. Yeah. It's that simple.
Honestly, it's still a good game. It's still a good sport. You can still
talk about it in fun ways.
Sport. It's still an amazing sport, even if you're not. Maybe I can, you've seen some of my clips playing safety in flag. So maybe I can get a shot now that there's no contact. And I will say the one thing is that I do agree with everybody is the ejection in college football. That has to change.
It has to go.
Because that we can get into a little bit of the flag 100%, 15 yards, make it 20 yards, make it 30 yards, like whatever. Make it a touchdown to the other team. Maybe that's a little too much. But like the kid, the 19-year-old, the 20-year-old who's just doing what his coach tells him to do, for the most part, there's some bad apples, but for the most part, does not deserve to be ejected from a football game. One of 12 that he's going to play in a calendar year. Like, I'm sorry.
Right. I agree.
It hurts me in my heart when I see that.
Well, it goes back to my issue that I brought up earlier, which is that we can't make judgments of intent. Yes. We have to take that out. This is not a matter of feeling. Okay, this is one of those things that you just kind of have to be a little bit cold and scientific about. Is the contact illegal or is it not? And if it is, you call it. But more times than not, what we can say, the one thing I will give the sport of football credit for is that once it declared that this type of contact was an issue, it was extremely proactive in legislating it out. And now I think we're at the point where everybody understands what's clear and what's not clear in terms of tackles and blocks, right? So we don't have to be as punitive in terms of ejecting guys. And more times than not, it's an honest mistake. You're moving at 18 miles an hour trying to make contact with the guy. It's not going to be a complete form-fitting tackle the way it is, on a bag or on a sled. It does need to be legislated out, but we can't always eject guys. I don't like the message that sends either. I agree with you on that.
Okay, before we transition to our college football talk, I'd like to remind her that, of course, 2 for 1 podcast, Jesus. That, of course, the Too High podcast is sponsored by Home Field Apparel. Home Field Apparel is a premium collegiate clothing brand out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. Home Field is in the middle of a big new Saturday season 2 where they launch a new school collection every Saturday at noon Eastern for 16 straight weeks. And what was the last thing they released? Your USC Trojans.
Yeah, Connor, I need somebody to reach out to me, man.
You need that gear.
Yeah, hook me up.
So go to homefieldapparel.com. Put in promo code PFF for 15% off your first purchase. That is homefieldapparel.com. Promo code PFF for 15% off your first purchase. Okay. Let's get into college because we have we have 2 really big games we want to talk about, and then we obviously want to talk about Clemson to start because
oh my God,
it's bad, it stays bad, and it's not getting any better. Clemson's offense, talk to me about it.
Okay, so the note that I have at the top after watching it, I think you can kind of sum it up. You can kind of sum up the state of affairs at Clemson. And what I said was, there is no world that exists where North Carolina State should feel comfortable blitzing you and playing man-to-man coverage.
Oh my God. They did it so. Oh my God. I'm glad you said that.
There is no world that exists that a program like Clemson can't get separation and punish NC State for sending 5 and playing cover 1. That to me, like, if you want to talk about something I was embarrassed by, that's embarrassing to me. And I don't know, based on the tape, and we've continued to revisit this all year long, what they're doing is not going to fix these problems. It's just not. Like one thing I will say from like a route concept against coverage perspective, this offense has always been built to force teams to play cover one and punish them for it. And to their credit, if you rush four and play cover one, a lot of their stuff is good, right? Like we talked about like, hey, they run smash all the time. You run sail concepts. You run these flood concepts all the time. That stuff is great against cover one, at least on a whiteboard, right? Because you're just picking out your matchup and you typically have a leverage advantage, right? So you either got your one-on-one outside that you like, or you got your slot who's running a route that's really hard to cover in man.
What do we like against man? Intermediate breaking routes. There you
right.
go.
Exactly.
Sail,
press a guy upfield
smash.
And snap in or snap out. Like, simple enough, right? The issue that they're having is something I never thought I would see at Clemson, which is that only one of their receivers can get me separation.
Bro,
Justin Ross is the only player on their roster that can get open. And if you look at the way that the targets are going, he's the only guy that DJ trusts. So, like, you're going to continue to run into these issues now. Nobody on the outside can win. Your best receiver is in the slot, and teams can pressure you and affect the quarterback. That means he's only got one chance to look. He's only got one look at the defense. And that's what you're going to continue to see over and over and over again.
It's like not a good roster.
It's not.
Offensively. It's not a good roster, man.
I don't know how this happened this fast.
The running back is not Travis Etienne. I don't care who you are. You're not Travis Etienne, and he's just average, I guess. And like you said, the receiving core outside of number 8, I think, is just not that good.
They're just not good enough.
And then compounding all of this is, well, two things. One, DJ is not the quarterback that we thought he was.
Yeah, at least not right now.
Not right now. Now, he made two.
Firmly, I can say firmly he is not who I thought he was right now.
Me too. He's just, the accuracy is not good enough.
I will give him credit. I'll give him credit in this game. I think coming off of the Georgia Tech game, I think that he clearly had an understanding that he had to push the ball downfield more. And I thought that he did a better job of at least taking some shots, especially when he recognized that he was seeing single high. Like his average depth of target this week was like significantly higher by like 4 or 5 yards than what it had been on average throughout the season. But still, like, you got to be throwing deep. Don't get you points on its own. You got to complete the passes, and not all of them were on target. You know, he has some good ones, but you know, on the whole, on average. There were some pretty bad misses.
It's like there's two insane plays on the touchdown, the first touchdown drive that put them up 7. I think we're tied the game at 7, whatever. Where he throws his corner out, where he's like on a line to double coverage,
right?
And then the touchdown throw when he throws it at the back of the end zone. But the problem is like, yeah, this is what we think DJ can do, but you also have to pair it with some play from
other
pocket,
stuff,
and it's just not there right now. And my point that I made to you earlier today was the lack of diversity in the offense is one thing, but I think one of the issues is they don't go fast. You know, we're going to talk about Ole Miss in a second. Ole Miss ain't do shit on offense, but guess what? They do it at 100,000 miles an hour, and you don't know they do just enough things that you don't know what the hell's happening. And they're reading this, they're reading that, and the receivers are running deep, whatever. Clemson is not like they're letting you line up. They're letting you see the formation. They're saying, "Oh, I know in this formation I can get this, and this." Good, perfect. Thank you. That's it.
So I'm gonna ask you a question. Okay, I don't know if you've looked at this, but I want you to take a guess. How many personnel groupings do you think Clemson has played in for more than 50 snaps?
One.
11.
That's
11 personnel.
Yeah.
11 personnel is by far the next highest usage is 12, and they've only got 26 snaps on it through 3 games.
And I wonder where those snaps are. That's the other thing. I bet those are all like red zone.
You can vamp, and I'm gonna look at the field position group because I have it open right now while this thing loads. Like, but to your point, yes, like this is the same conversation I have about USC, right? We're going to continue to come back to this. We talked about it with like single back run game. The idea that an offense only has to do one thing well, it's done, guys.
Yeah, it's tough.
At least if you're only going to do one thing well, you have to do it the way you described it, which is moving at a speed that you can't keep up with. That's what gets some of these other schools by, right? Like when we talk about a team like we're going to get to Arkansas, when you start talking about like that Brile system, it works the best when you're flying up and down the field, right? Because at that point, it doesn't even matter that we're not subbing guys in and out because we're moving faster than you can adjust. But to only be in 11 personnel, basically always ever be in 2x2 and 3x1. There's no bunch. There's no bunches. No stacks. Motion. Like their RPOs. You're playing up against a team that basically stayed in 2 high almost all game, and their RPOs are hitches and speed outs. I'm sorry, guys. It's not enough. I thought that we solved the how to attack cover 3 with RPOs like 4 years ago. Where's the glance? Justin Ross is like 6'3", dude, with like one of the best catching radiuses in college football. I watched that guy make catches that nobody else has made since 2019, and he's running hitches on RPOs with the overhang standing right over the top of him. I don't get it. And this thing has to evolve. They are going to lose another football game.
They are going to lose a third football game and maybe a fourth football game.
Yes, they are going to lose more football games if this stays this way. Like that's not an exaggeration at all.
Yeah, like this was just it's been coming. But we thought that the personnel would continue to get. I think we just thought they would continue to get away with this because this is something we talked about for a long time. With the Clemson offense, and they keep getting away with it. But the personnel, like we said, is just not good enough. And I think their saving grace, which is the 5-star quarterback who looked really good last year in the 2 starts, is just not that quarterback anymore. So it's always like, okay, well, we can cover up, this all these holes in the ship with this DJ person, but he just unfortunately he's not it this year, and it's now they're drowning in it. They haven't been able to move the ball in any game this year. Nope. They played South Carolina State. Like, okay,
that was it. Okay, fake. That's a fake game, guys. Not a real. Might as well have been a scrimmage. That don't count. Sorry.
So you played 3 FBS teams and you could not move the ball against any of them. You got problems, man. You got massive problems.
And I can tell you now, NC State is not going to be the best defense that's on the schedule.
No,
they're in trouble. But to answer your question,
Narduzzi, 26. I hope they have Narduzzi. That would be interesting.
Yeah, 26 snaps in 12 personnel overall. 16 of them either happened in the red zone, at the goal line, or backed up. So within their own 15.
What's left?
It's a fake personnel package.
Yeah,
just like we were talking about with the Bills. That's essentially their whole short yardage offense right there.
So I'll add this. I don't remember if we ended up talking about this on the podcast recently, but after the Georgia Clemson game that Clemson lost and they didn't move the ball again, I wrote the article and we talked about it. Again, I don't remember if it was private or public, but we talked about how Georgia, because of Clemson, their run game, specifically their run game, is very undiverse because it's like, hey, the back is to my left. That means we're going zone left. The back is to my right. I mean, we're zone right. And there's just not enough. They can put the tight end on either side, but there's not really enough that they do. And they don't love running their quarterback, so you don't add that extra, that extra hat there. So Georgia, and I said it was fit and fold kind of defensive thing where they kind of see where the flow is going, and then they force a cutback to an unblocked linebacker. Mm-hmm. What I think it was, and being told by smarter people than me, was that it was literally they just said we're gonna cross dog you, like we're gonna blitz your run game, and we don't care about your passing game because they knew before everyone else it was gonna stink, and we know where you're gonna run the football. So what we're gonna do is the linebacker that's kind of away from where the run is going. He's going to angle and knife into the front side A gap. And yeah, if you block it up, great. But because he's coming from depth with speed, he can get a little bit of penetration into that front side A gap. And then the running back is saying, well, I'm not going to.
I got to cut back, right? I have to cut back.
And what that does is the kind of front side linebacker who just saw his buddy run across his face to get into the front side A back says, oh, I can't. I'm not going to backside A gap because I know the cutback is coming right to me. So yeah, it kind of works like a fit and fold, and it kind of works, but what it is like an X cross dog stunt, but like you can do that. You can get away with it, and they ran it like 8, 9, 10 times in the game. You can get away with it because the offense is telling you where the ball is going. All right, there you go. You're muted. Unmute yourself.
Said it's very bad and not good, and they should feel bad about it.
We got it. All right. Okay. I want to add this. I forgot to tell you I was going to talk about this, but it's something it's very little. We're talking about for 2 minutes. I just happened to watch Texas A&M's defense again. Oh, it's good. We're going to transition here. I just happened to watch Texas A&M's defense against Kent State. And remember, so we talked to Dustin Crum, the Kent State quarterback, and we've been talking about it for a long time. They run the super spreader offense. And how do you beat it? Because we don't really have an answer. I still don't really have an answer. If you have equal talent, it's still tough to deal with. But what I thought was really cool was what Texas A&M did. Don't ask me why I watched this tape, but what Texas A&M was doing was play cover one. That's always the first answer with any offense. If you can play cover one, play cover one. And what I thought was really cool was, and again, it kind of plays into the same thing of knowing where the run is going. What they were able to do was kind of blitz an extra player because you're in cover one and you do have an extra player to the side of the back. And unblocked with speed, hand the ball off. He's coming down the edge, and he's going to make the tackle, and he's always going to be free. And I thought that was a really smart game plan for Texas A&M to deal with an interesting offense, though an offense that they can just handle kind of personnel-wise if they wanted to. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. That's it. So Texas A&M just lost to Arkansas. Arkansas is about to play Georgia. Let's talk a bit about Arkansas defense, because for 2 years now they have been really, really good. Underrated. I think people are starting to come around to it. Obviously, last year they had a better season than anyone thought. So kudos to Sam Pittman, what he's done. And honestly, kudos to Barry Odom, former Missouri coach, comes back. He's a defensive coordinator. They're doing stuff that is fresh, playing with 3 down linemen, playing with 3-2-6, playing 3 high safeties. What are they doing that you're enjoying out of the Razorbacks right now?
I think that, the most impressive thing is the fact that they can generate pressure with 3 down linemen. That unlocks a lot for a defense, especially for a defense like them that I think they have NFL talent up front and maybe not NFL talent in the secondary. And for a lot of teams that have that problem, we talked about this with Ohio State at different points, right, throughout last year. When you don't have that kind of talent in the secondary, a lot of times it doesn't matter what you're doing with pass rush, but because of the structure of their defense and the fact that they can generate that pressure, you can kind of paper over a lot of the issues that you might have otherwise, right? That was basically why Texas couldn't find any airspace to do anything when they played against them, right? Is they're getting, not only are they getting pressure with 3, but if they're dropping 8, that means that I have to extend. Well, how do I extend if all of my linemen are getting their asses kicked, right? Like that becomes its own issue. So that's number 1 for me. Number 2 is, and this is also tied to being able to win with 3 down linemen, is how much dime they play. Like they're up above 40% so far this year in dime personnel. And it's basically, like you said, they're either in 3 high or they get into like, a 3-2-6 odd front where what would be your outside backers are really your nickel and dime players. But again, to that point, the more you can do to stop the run with a light box, the better it is for you in coverage. And that is the mantra for their opponent that they have coming up this week. Like that is Kirby's deal. And I think that, I'm getting ready to write about them because I think that that's something that they do better than anybody in football, period. But that to me is the key. When you start talking about these explosive offenses, these downfield offenses, the more you can get out of your pass rush or being able to gum up the front when teams run the ball, the better off you are in covering the pass. And that's why they've been as successful as they've been so far.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's impressed me about Odom, like kind of from a play calling perspective, is his patience.
Mm-hmm.
He just won't get out of it.
Right.
Just won't get out of it. But
whether it's looking great or not,
in a good way. And obviously they haven't been tested, but not tested. They've been tested, but they haven't been in a game where I was like, oh my God, we just got 21 points scored on us. We got to change stuff. Like they've been so good that he can be patient, but still, I think that is a virtue in this sense where he's like, we're not going to come out of this. We're not going to go to a 4 down. We're not going to go to this. We're not going to change it because, it's been working. And I think that's really good for them. We'll say on the other side of the ball, Texas A&M offense. Hey boy. Quarterback.
That's a very kind way to put it.
Quarterback has some issues, and I don't love the matchup of Jimbo Fisher versus this style of defense.
I don't either.
I think you need to, it's on, and they had some good concepts that they probably drew up for this week, I'm sure, but you really gotta change. It's really kind of playing against an option defense, whatever. It's very different, and you gotta be different on offense, and you can't just run your shallow cross all the time and try and get the tight end on a dig route.
This is what this defense is built to take away. Yeah. Right. You're taking away those manufactured open windows that you used to see in older styles of coverages and front structures. That's exactly what Arkansas is built to cause problems for. So to your point, all the standard stuff that typically looks really, really good in an offense like Jimbo's,
who runs a lot of standard offense? Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah. That is, he is the standard offense guy.
Yeah. So, it's just not a good matchup for them. And then, again, going back to your point, which is that those 3 defensive linemen, 2 inside linebackers can play. They're good players.
They fit the hell out of the run.
Yeah. This is something that I noticed watching the 3 high stuff, when it kind of became a thing recently, or the past couple of years, was what you can kind of do is your 2 inside linebackers can really be aggressive fitting the run front side, knowing that the kind of middle safety guy or whoever else you have can sort out a cutback later.
Right. And it's the same thing that Marcus Freeman was able to do at Cincinnati, and what he's kind of starting to work towards at Notre Dame. It create, and this is something that I've brought up before, creating layers in your defense, right? So that way you create relief for guys. So that way linebackers, which are typically in no-win situations, can play downhill, almost like how you, even if you're just playing, even if you're supposed to be playing a soft zone, you can liberate your guys to play downhill if they get a run key, because there's enough vertical depth in your defense that they have time, right? You're protecting them. It's the idea. It's basically it's just adapting some Tampa 2 principles to the spread era.
That's it.
Is effectively what we're looking at.
You know who sucks at playing Tampa 2? The Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, man. Very much so.
It's just tough.
The Eagles suck at everything, dude.
Well, this is the problem, and I just don't think this deep, getting off topic here, but it's I don't think that and I haven't rewatched the tape, so and I'm not gonna watch the Eagles defense from the all.
And you shouldn't. Yeah, you should care about yourself enough not to.
It's the Colts, where that coaching staff was last year, had a really good 3-tech. They had 2 really good linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the defense personnel-wise could probably play a cover 2 type of defense a little better. And I just don't think this is the way to go in modern. You just can't play cover 2 in modern football. I don't get it. I don't get it. But again, it's you gotta weigh with it by playing this way last year and the last couple of years, because you had good players for the specific positions you need in cover 2. And this is not, Ben Solak told this to us on the program 2 weeks ago. They beat up on bad offenses a lot, and they couldn't play against good offenses. So, anyways, I don't know what I got mad thinking about last night's.
Which is funny because I don't think about that team at all anymore. They can't hurt me.
All right. Before we get into the last topic of the day, just a reminder that the Too High podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial. While you focus on your roster moves, I need to focus on my roster moves because I'm 1 and 2 in fantasy right now. Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. That didn't work. I'm going to say it again. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps you advance your money moves. That's it. I read it right. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow, Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to identify your needs and adjust your goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. I'm going to get roasted in the chat by Nick.
I can't wait for that.
I can't read. Okay. Last but not least, big game, Ole Miss against Alabama. That game ended 63-48, I believe, last season. So one of the things that I want to talk about with you was the issues, I guess broadly, the issues that Alabama's defense had in stopping the Lane Kiffin offense last year.
I mean, first of all, nobody would know better. This is something that we agree on. Nobody would know better how to attack that stuff than Lane Kiffin. I mean, like a lot of the modern era of football, like crazily enough, you know, I don't think anybody would have thought they would have been saying this in 2015, but a lot of the modern era of football in the spread kind of starts with what Kiffin was doing at Alabama anyways. But whether it's, you know, the tempo for one, so that's the first thing. And this is a lot of the stuff we're talking about isn't even specific to Saban, but it's just, it speaks to how effective it is that it causes the amount of issues that it does. So the tempo for one, the fact that they can move as quickly as they do, that means that, you know, the ways that working out of a small set of personnel groupings can be a hindrance for a team like Clemson that doesn't move as fast. It becomes a benefit for a team like Ole Miss because of their speed. So when you're playing up against a defense like Nick Saban's, where he wants to have the perfect call for everything, the perfect personnel grouping for everything, now you can start to shrink his call sheet. You know, and that's a world that I think Kiffin is probably more comfortable with because he's not really coming in trying to run 1,000 different plays anyways, right?
Dude,
like,
I've seen Lane
you've written about it.
He is the king of being like, I'm going to run the same play straight
over,
times.
Over and over.
They
and
have
over.
all the RPOs and stuff into it so the ball can go to different spots, but it's the same play over and over again. He loves doing that stuff.
And that's extremely effective as well for this offense and for a guy like Matt Corral because he always knows where he's going to end up going with the ball, right? Like that's another effective method. Like when you talk about other offenses, like, you know, Clemson at different points when it's been at its peak and the issues it's caused for Saban. What's the one thing you can kind of walk away with? You know, obviously they had excellent quarterbacks at the time, but they were very decisive, right? Yeah. I know if I've got the one-on-one, I'm going to take the one-on-one on the outside. Mm-hmm. If I got the crosser, I'm going to take the crosser. We're not going to overthink this. If I've got a corner route, we're going to take the corner route. You know, and I watched the clinic. I want to say it was Jeremy Pruitt, and I think you've seen it as well, the 3x1 clinic. And he was talking about, you know, kind of all the different stuff that guys from that Saban tree run at a 3x1. And the one thing he said that always stuck with me was, and I'm not going to say it verbatim. I can't remember it verbatim, but effectively what he was getting across is if you think that you're going to beat a Nick Saban defense by dinking and dunking and being precise in intermediate areas of the field, you're going to lose every time. The only way you're going to beat them is over his head. You got to throw the ball over their heads. And a guy like Lane Kiffin is the perfect kind of guy for that, right? Like he didn't put up 48 points on Alabama by just being masterful in matriculating the ball down the field. To a certain degree, beating that defense means that you just got to say, fuck it, we're throwing it deep. If it's one-on-one, their corner is better than our receiver, but oh well, I'm throwing it deep, you know? If it's middle of the field open, throw the damn post. Yeah. Who cares? If it's incomplete, it's incomplete. But one thing you're never going to do, and I've watched this happen with decent offenses over and over again against Saban, is try to be super precise, right? We're going to hit the dig. We're going to work through our progression and hit the dig. Not happening. It's not happening.
I'll tell you
that's a low percentage throw.
Do that.
Who's that?
Never mind.
Nice.
Well, though I will say, Joe Burrow in 2019. What did they do to start that game? They went outside and they tested the corners, and Chase made a whole bunch of big plays. Like so that they even with Joe.
And Burrow, what that opened up in the second half was the crossers. Now later in the game, you can go to Justin Jefferson when you need it, right? But you have to attack with the Jamar Chase and a Terrace Marshall first.
Yeah,
you got to at least put you've got to put enough of a consideration in a defensive coach's mind that you're going to throw to the sideline. Make me believe, even if you don't believe in it, you've got to make the defensive coach believe in it. So that way you can get softer coverage or get them to run like 2-man or bracket coverages where you're concerned more about the outside than the inside. So I would not be surprised. I don't think it'll be 48 points good again, but I would not be surprised if
back-to-back years. Man.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they're able to move the ball. I mean, doing it in Tuscaloosa too. I mean, that's going to be tough, but
yeah, I think the other thing is besides in addition to the speed of which Ole Miss plays is, and I think you saw this, I could be totally wrong here, but I think you saw this against Alabama last year was unbalanced formations. And I don't necessarily mean like tackle over 4x0. It could be just 3x1 or something like that. But like that stuff, any type of unbalanced, encompassingly, a legal unbalance I don't know what to call them, but like a legal unbalance formation is the speed gets you into weird defensive issues. Mm-hmm. And actually just on an Ole Miss podcast recently, and I brought up that Ole Miss against LSU in 2019. And I remember there was one play where they were running, and this is not Lane Kiffin, this is Rich Rodriguez, but like they were running super fast, and then they got into a nub formation. And I think it was just a regular nub, 3x1 nub with a tight end on the backside, and they ran zone read. And the end, Chason crashed.
There's nobody home behind him.
No one home behind him. Just because you were moving fast, because you gave him an interesting formation, and then people forgot, I'm
the contained player now.
I'm contained now. Yeah. I can't crash on this right now. And then what ends up happening was John Rispumley was down the sideline, and the safety was at 12 yards, and he beats him, and then you're scoring touchdown. Anyways, so I just say the thing with the Ole Miss offense that's crazy is just like they really don't do a lot. Like, I'm sorry, but they have. So it's a fun offense. I love it. I say this about every offense, but I'm like, if I got back into coaching, this is the offense I would run. But so they have two offenses. They go spread 2x2. It's usually 2x2, and they run 4 verts. And everyone has an adjustment. There's no locked routes. Everyone is adjusting. If it's man-to-man, we hook at 10, 12 yards. If it's cover 4, we bend it. Both receivers bend it. If it's cover 3, then the outside receivers will just stop or whatever. That's it. Like that is watch the Louisville game. That's all they did. And then of course they're adding their jet sweeps, their fakes, jets to add to the run game, and then the pop pass comes off of it. They run running back seam, fake jet running back seam a lot. And then you saw in later games, they played 2 other games, Austin Peay and Tulane, I believe, where they're coming with some interesting condensed formations now. Instead of being super spread, you're a condensed formation. What do you do in your condensed formation? Here's your crossing route. Here's your crossing route. Here's your crossing route. Here's your crossing route. And Matt Corral is more than good enough at getting to the right receiver, throwing the ball accurately, and they're able to do it like that. I think one of the issues is last year they played with Kenny Yeboah, a tight end, who's a really good player, and they were able to be in 11 personnel the whole game, but like you're in a real 11 personnel because the tight end is a really good player. They don't have it this year. Like, can you beat Saban a second year in a row, and this time you are only playing with like 4 receivers on the field, basically?
It's tough.
That scares me.
They have a much better pass rush this year than they had last year as well. Yes. Like it's going to be tough.
But if anyone can do it, it's Lane Kiffin. All right, before we end here, just a reminder that go to pff.com and read Diante's. It's 4 likes, 4 dislikes, or is it 2 and 2? Yeah.
Yep.
4 likes, 4 dislikes piece that's coming out soon. You said you also wrote about the Bills this week.
Yep, that should be coming out soon as well.
I wrote about Zach Wilson, a very, very dreary piece about Zach Wilson. Doom and gloom, baby. Doom and gloom.
Not great right now. It's not great.
Go on pff.com. You have all of our locked article content. You have the college football betting dashboards, player grades, and all that good stuff. So and I guess this is it. We'll see you guys next week. I will be in Cincinnati, live in the studio. so my voice will sound smooth and velvety, and we'll talk to you guys
Cool.
next week.